Forest terror, the truck driver's nightmare, the rain hit the windshield like thousands of cold fingers trying to get in. Lynn gripped the steering wheel tighter, feeling sweat cooling in her palms despite the warmth in the cabin. The clock on the dashboard showed 23:17, and the darkness outside was dense. She had to drive through the forest on the narrow country road to complete her delivery before morning. Just 40 kilometers left, she mumbled to herself, glancing at her mobile phone showing a weak signal. She had promised Peter to call when she arrived, regardless of the time. The thought of her partner made her smile faintly. Peter would probably be awake, bent over some broken engine in their garage. He always worked late when Lynn was out on the roads. The radio hummed softly, a night talk show with a host whose voice was smooth and calming. Lynn turned up the volume to distract herself from the darkness pressing against the windows. She had always hated the dark ever since childhood. The irrational fear had followed her into adulthood, making her career choice a daily struggle. "Idiot," she whispered to herself. "Why did you become a truck driver if you're afraid of the dark?" The answer was simple. The money was good, and with a 4-year-old daughter at home, they needed the extra income. Ella's smile appeared in her thoughts, a smile that lit up the very darkness around her. A sharp bang made the truck shake. Lynn lost her grip on the wheel for a second, her heart skipping a beat as the vehicle made a sudden movement to the right. "What the hell?" She braked, and the heavy truck slid several meters on the wet asphalt before stopping. The engine died with a coughing sound. When she turned the key, only a clicking sound came. Silence filled the cabin as the radio also went quiet. Lynn fumbled for her mobile phone. No signal. She swallowed hard and examined her surroundings through the windshield. On both sides of the road, dark trees towered far above the truck's roof. Rain fell mercilessly from a black sky, and road lighting was non-existent in this remote stretch. She had to go out and see what had happened. The thought made her shiver. Forest terror was not something she had expected this evening. She groped for the flashlight in the glove compartment, tested it, a weak yellow light. The batteries were dying. With a deep breath, she opened the door and stepped out into the rain. The cold hit her immediately. Lynn directed the flashlight's weak beam toward the truck's right front wheel. The tire was completely flat, rubber hanging in torn shreds. But that wasn't all something had cut the tire from the side. It almost looked like claw marks. "Impossible," she mumbled, gently touching the deep gashes. A sudden gust of wind made the trees whisper around her. Lynn nervously swept the flashlight in an arc around herself. The forest suddenly seemed much closer, as if the trees had moved toward the road. A dark-fearing truck driver in the middle of nowhere was not exactly her dream scenario. She had a spare tire but would never manage to change it herself on the heavy truck. Lynn stepped back into the cabin and tried her mobile phone again. Still no signal. According to the navigator, the nearest settlement was a gas station about 5 kilometers ahead. 5 kilometers through the forest, she whispered to herself, feeling panic beginning to crawl up her spine. She thought of Ella, whose portrait hung from the rearview mirror. "Mom's coming home," she promised the photograph. For Ella and Peter, she would overcome this fear. After packing a water bottle, an energy bar, and a flashlight in a small backpack, she locked the truck and began walking along the road. The rain had subsided somewhat to a steady drizzle. Her work boots splashed through puddles while she kept the flashlight's weak beam directed in front of her. After just 10 minutes of walking, Lynn felt something was wrong. The forest felt awake. Every time she swept the light beam toward the trees, she thought she saw shadows moving just outside the light's reach. Quick, agile movements that disappeared when she tried to focus on them. Just animals, she mumbled. Foxes or deer, but deep inside she knew it was something else. No fox moved that way. No deer would follow a human so deliberately. A cracking sound made her freeze. It came from the forest, just a few meters in among the trees. Lynn directed the weak flashlight there. 2 reflective points gleamed in the darkness like eyes, but much too high up to belong to any natural forest animal. "Hello," she called with a trembling voice. "Is anyone there?" The reflections disappeared. Then she heard it, a long, hissing breath, followed by a sound reminiscent of claws against bark. Something was moving parallel to her inside the trees, something large. Panic made her quicken her pace. Soon she was half running along the road while the rain increased again and drummed against her jacket. Behind her, she heard how the mysterious being in the forest also increased its speed. Her flashlight flickered and died. Lynn swore loudly and shook it desperately, but only a faint light returned for a moment before disappearing completely. Now she was surrounded by total darkness, apart from the weak moonlight that occasionally broke through the cloud cover. "Keep it together," she whispered to herself. "Keep moving forward." She thought of Peter, who would worry when she didn't call, of Ella waiting for Mom to come home with the little toy Lynn had promised to buy in Sunsville. They needed her, she couldn't give in to fear. Suddenly something stepped onto the road in front of her. It was just a silhouette, but Lynn froze. The figure was unnaturally tall and thin, with arms that hung almost to the ground. In the weak moonlight, she couldn't discern any face, just a dark outline. Who are you?" she stammered. The creature didn't move, but a faint, screeching sound spread from it, like dragging fingernails across a chalkboard. Lynn backed away slowly. "I just want to pass," she said with a shaky voice. "I need help with my truck." The creature took a step forward. Now the moonlight fell over it, and Lynn suppressed a scream. It was almost human, but misconstrued in some fundamental way. The skin was pale as death itself, the body distortedly elongated. The face was empty of all human features except for two black holes where the eyes should be. "Lynn," the voice was dry as leaves rustling over autumn ground. Lynn Bergstrom. How could it know her name? Ice-cold shivers spread through her body. "What do you want?" she whispered. The creature extended an arm. Its fingers were long, tapering to claw-pointed tips. "Your fear, it tastes sweet." Lynn stumbled backward and fell hard on the wet asphalt. Survival in a rainy forest with a broken truck had suddenly become a fight for her life. The creature approached with jerky, spider-like movements. "Stay where you are," she screamed. To her surprise, the being stopped. It tilted its head at an unnatural angle. "You carry something stronger than fear," it said, and inhaled through the gaping holes in its face. "Love, worry, responsibility." The creature seemed to observe her curiously. "A child, you have a child, Ella." The thought of this creature even thinking about her daughter filled Lynn with sudden rage. She stood up, adrenaline pumping through her body. "Don't touch my family," she growled. "Family," repeated the creature with a toneless sound that could have been a laugh. "I can help you get out of here, Lynn Bergstrom, but everything has its price." It took a step closer. "A dark-fearing truck driver like you. I can remove your fear forever, but you must give me something in return." "What?" asked Lynn, despite a voice within her screaming not to listen. "A promise," hissed the creature. "When your daughter becomes old enough to understand fear, then you shall send her to me, to the forest." "Never," Lynn's scream echoed between the trees. "I would never," but the words died in her throat as the creature moved with inhuman speed. Suddenly it stood just centimeters from her, its breath cold against her face, smelling of soil and decay. "Then you stay here," it hissed, "forever, a part of the forest, a part of the terror." The being's long fingers grazed her cheek. Where they touched her skin, she felt a burning cold spreading inward. It was as if her life energy was being sucked out through the touch. "No," she struck wildly around her and managed to break the contact. "I'll get out of here myself." She started running, blind in the darkness, with the rain lashing at her face. Behind her, she heard the being moving through the forest, its movements faster than hers. It was as if it was playing with her, letting her believe she could get away, only to then show that the escape was meaningless. Lynn stumbled over something on the road and fell hard. Pain shot up from her ankle. Desperately, she tried to get up, but her leg wouldn't support her. Panic welled up within her as she heard the creature approaching from behind. "You cannot escape what you fear most," whispered the voice, now right next to her ear. Your fear is your prison cell. Lynn crawled forward on all fours, refusing to give up despite the pain. She thought of Ella, of the promise to come home, of Peter, who would be devastated if she disappeared. "I'm not afraid," she gasped, even if the lie was obvious. "I'm not." "Prove it," hissed the creature. "Give me something you love, something small, a memory, a first kiss, a child's laughter." Lynn suddenly understood. This being fed not just on fear, but on the very essence of human experiences. She stopped, slowly turned around, and met the empty eye sockets. "If I give you a memory, will you let me go then?" The creature nodded slowly. A fair exchange. Lynn closed her eyes and searched her memory. Not Ella, never Ella or Peter, but something else. She thought of her first long journey as a driver, the triumphant feeling of freedom when she drove over the Öresund bridge with the sun glittering in the water. A beautiful memory, but one she could sacrifice. "Take it," she whispered and visualized the memory. "Let it emerge into consciousness." The creature reached out a hand and touched her forehead. An icy feeling spread through her head, and suddenly the memory became blurry, distant, as if it belonged to someone else. Lynn gasped at the sudden loss. "Acceptable," mumbled the creature and withdrew. "But insufficient for your complete freedom." He pointed ahead along the road. "You will find help up ahead, but we will meet again, Lynn Bergstrom, when darkness falls and you are alone. You belong to the forest now, a small part of it." Then the figure drew back into the trees, merged with the shadows until it disappeared completely. Lynn remained, shaking and soaked on the wet asphalt. After what felt like an eternity, she saw headlights approaching on the road. A car stopped beside her and an older man stepped out. "Good heavens, are you okay?" he called over the rain. "What are you doing out here?" 3 weeks later, Lynn sat at the kitchen table with her hands clenched around a cup of coffee. Outside the window, autumn leaves fell in a swirl of red and yellow. Peter came into the kitchen, concern evident in his usually confident face. "You slept restlessly again," he said, stroking Lynn's hair. "Same nightmare," Lynn nodded mutely. Every night since the terrible experience in the forest, she had dreamed of the creature. Sometimes it just stood watching her from a distance. Sometimes it stretched its long fingers toward Ella's room. "It will fade with time," Peter assured her, but Lynn heard the uncertainty in his voice. The trucking company had been understanding. The broken-down truck had been towed the next day. The tire had been damaged, but no one could explain the strange gashes. Officially, she had suffered from exhaustion and hallucinations, perhaps a mild concussion after falling on the wet road, but Lynn knew better. Sometimes in the corner of her eye, she thought she saw an unnaturally long shadow following her. At night, she sometimes woke to a hissing breath outside the bedroom window, and there was something else, the missing memory. A void where something should be, a sense of loss she couldn't place. "Mom, look," Ella came running in with a drawing in hand. "It's the forest." Lynn took the paper with trembling hands. Her 4-year-old daughter had drawn a dark forest with tall, black trees, and between the trunks, an elongated, thin figure. "Who is this, sweetheart?" she asked with a dry mouth. Ella smiled, an innocent smile that made Lynn's heart shrink. "It's my new friend. He says he knows you, Mom. He says you promised that I can visit him when I grow up." Peter gave Lynn a confused look, but Lynn couldn't respond. She stared at the drawing, at the elongated figure whose arms almost reached the ground. "He visits me sometimes in my dreams," Ella continued happily. "He says he likes my memories." That night, long after Peter and Ella had fallen asleep, Lynn stood at the kitchen window, staring out at the edge of the forest behind their house. She had always hated the darkness, but now it was something else, a knowledge of what lurked there. "I gave you what you asked for," she whispered into the darkness. "Leave my daughter alone." From the depths of the forest, the shadows seemed to move, form into a familiar figure that slowly raised a hand and greeted. Or perhaps it was just the wind playing with the branches of the trees. Lynn turned away from the window, and at that moment she heard Ella's voice from the bedroom. "Mom, he's here again. He says you know what he wants." With a pounding heart, Lynn went toward her daughter's room, aware that the battle against the terror in the forest had only just begun. The darkness outside their house seemed to pulse with anticipation, and somewhere, deep among the trees, the being waited to reap its reward.